Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Now this morning I'm looking at a very important book. It's one that will affect a lot of people, certainly members of the bar, in practice concerning what we're doing at the moment with Judicial Review. It's the new edition of Judicial Review Law and Practice, which has come to us from Jordan's. Now there's quite a lot of stuff on the market about JR throughout the whole of the legal sort of publishing sector, but this is one of the better books, I think. This is the book here. Elizabeth and I have looked at the book and had a discussion about it. It's now in a second edition. We did review the first edition. There is the actual front, there's the side, and there's the spine, there's the back. The general editors are Mrs. Justice Patterson and Sam Karim, and the assistant editor is Justin Leslie. You can see that there's been quite a lot of change since the first edition some years ago. Let's go to the back. It's a hardback. It runs to nearly 700 pages. A lot of detail to be expected. What I do like, lots of forms at the back. Very helpful, of course, if you're ever going ahead with Judicial Review. Again, more forms there. Then there's guidance as well, which is also extremely helpful, trying to get your way through the whole of the problems within the administrative court. The front of the book is there, and you can see that what they're trying to do with this book, there are a huge number of contributors, by the way, what they're trying to do with this book is bring everything together so they can produce a statement today for 2015 as to what is actually happening. Some very well-known people appearing as contributors. Then there's a preface, which is well worth reading if you've got time. The advent of the regionalisation project of the administrative court was the catalyst that led to the first edition, that's what it says. Obviously they've now built upon that. Then there's an introduction. What is Judicial Review, for those who probably are not very familiar with it, so on. The Bowman report, more introductory information there and so on. Then you get into the main section, lots of cases, not surprisingly, huge number of cases. Then you've got, after that, the statutes, a lot of them as well. Then you get into the body copy of the book. Now, chapter 1, grounds for Judicial Review. It says of Judicial Review. Doesn't matter, you can see, however you pronounce it, you can see it gives the grounds. Now, the paragraph numbering at the side is very important because that's how you find what you're looking for. There's a lot of footnoting, as you can see, all the way through. It's a very detailed work. I mean, one of the problems with the footnoting, to a certain extent, is it taking over the page sometimes. There's always a bit of a danger with that, but this is a very good book. It gives you grounds for Judicial Review, obviously remedies. It covers everything that you're really looking for. Community care is covered, for instance, all the usual stuff. Criminal law, nice section on that as well. And then immigration law, naturally, and so on. I'm most impressed with this book, I really am. I like the first edition, and this is even better. They've looked at it very carefully and come up with something which I think is both helpful for the practitioner and also for the applicant, because at the end of the day there are a lot of people who think, oh, I must go for Judicial Review. They have no idea how much it's going to cost, and they're absolutely appalled when they find some of the difficulties that they then encounter. So it's, I think, quite important to be well aware of the way in which Judicial Review is now approached in 2015, because things have changed dramatically, certainly with the coalition government's policies towards JR, with the Secretary of State for Justice's view on trying to restrict actually certain types of case, because he's been very unhappy about the way in which, as he concludes, that's Chris Grayling concludes, that perhaps the Judicial Review system has been manipulated by certain people. Be it as it may, we have a general election on the 7th of May. I'm recording this in the March. This book is very current and certainly will be for the next year or so. But if there is a big change of government, we could expect some further substantial changes in Judicial Review. But that's for the future. At the moment, I think this is the best book on the market. Now, Elizabeth and I have given it the title an indispensable reference and guide to judicial review, now in its second edition from Jordan's. And as I say, the first edition came out of the need, with the establishment of the administrative court, the need to have something which could reflect the modern way in which we go about our JR applications. This is what we say. The concept of judicial review is an enlightened one. It is intended to act as a mechanism by which members of the general public, say, can call big government to account for decisions that are perceived as flawed. The first edition of this book, published 6 years ago, filled the then yawning gap in the literature on the law and practice of judicial review proceedings. It provided then an in-depth analysis of areas where, in the words of the editors, quote, judicial review is readily used as a means of redress. Redress, that is, against abuses of power, and therefore a vital constitutional safeguard. Such areas would include mainly those under the jurisdiction of central or local government, from planning, environmental and housing to education, immigration and criminal law, and more besides, all carefully commented upon and examined in this book, which also includes essential procedural rules, forms, and guidance issued by the administrative court. You'll find those at the back, and I do think they're important because you've got to get your paperwork in order if you ever make these types of application. As the book covers the main subject areas where judicial review claims are brought, specialist practitioners will find it exceptionally helpful, and the list of contributors gives you an indication of those specialists that the general editors have gone to get the information, and Jordan's are to be congratulated, in my view, for doing that. Launched by Jordan's, as I say, this new expanded second edition has been extensively rewritten to update practitioners on the changes pertaining to judicial review. Note the new chapters on, for example, healthcare and new developments in the NHS, prison law and professional regulation. There are extended sections on the practice and procedure relating to grounds for review and remedies, and other important changes such as the introduction of the planning court, which is an interesting development and one that we will be obviously monitoring in the next few years. There is also updated advice on time limits and protective costs orders, and of course commentary on leading cases such as SL and Westminster. Considering the subject matter, which is formidably wide-ranging and often abstruse, the book's plain English approach is refreshing, and the thoroughness of the research and scholarship is certainly reassuring. So thank you to all for that. Certainly the book excels, in our view, as a research resource, with copious footnoting. In fact, there's a large amount of it throughout, and a massive section, the front, of over 90 pages containing the tables of cases, statutes and statutory instruments. There are 5 appendices containing, for example, the statutory materials and administrative court guidance, which is, again, rather than messing about with the internet, you've got it all here. Appendix 5 gives you the 30 pages of forms, which again I showed you right when I showed you the book at the beginning where they are. I'll show it in a moment, but they are very important forms to consider. Make sure you use the correct form and you fill it in properly. Finally, whether you are advising on a case or providing representation in court, or both, you'll only gain in confidence and self-assurance as a practitioner in this difficult area with this book to hand. If you're involved professionally in any aspect of public law, and that's what this is, you can't afford not to have this useful and authoritative volume, now in a second edition, in your library. The law is stated that the 1st of December 2014. I'll show it again. It's a hardback. It's good. It's a nice solid book, which is nice. But there's the spine, there's the back. It's good because sometimes these books can fall apart quite quickly when you're opening them a lot. These are the forms at the back. I always think the forms are very important because it does give you some indication of what you've got to do. This is the immigration area, but it does give you some idea. They've got the notes and everything else. It's all actually in one place. So it's a bit of a one-stop shop in many ways. This is again administrative court addresses which are given for the various areas, acknowledgement of service, that sort of stuff. Then you've got a whole range of other things. Judicial review claim form, there's the standard form. Now it's important to know about this because I've met too many people who immediately think as prospective clients, oh, we're going to go to judicial review without having any idea of what it's really about. And there must be caution. There we go. There's the paragraph numbering again, and you've got footnotes at the bottom, not too many on that page. Then you've got the tribunal system, which is actually quite nicely structured because it's been through quite a bit of change recently. So you've got the new type of tribunal and how the new structure. It's an overview of appeals, which again I think is quite important when you're looking at the way in which, if you're dissatisfied with what has happened, the way in which you can go. Remedies, of course, are always an important area, and I think that is extremely well covered. There's a lot of case law about remedies. So I'd like to thank the authors, all of them. Obviously the two most important ones are the general editors, Mrs. Justice Patterson and Sam Karim, and also to the assistant editor Justin Leslie. Jordan's have come up with a first-class book on judicial review in my view, and I think that you will find if you practice in this area, or even if you're advising or trying to draft something in terms of grounds, it will be of some help to you. It's not the easiest area. The trouble is that many of our clients think it is quite simple. It's actually not. It's a minefield. So thank you for helping us guide our way through that minefield. Jordan's and all the other people involved. Thank you. Bye-bye.